Hi, my name's Lacey. They told everyone I was too busy to be invited, said I wouldn't care. But while I was presenting at a conference, they were using my house, hosting a family reunion without me. They turned my bedroom into a nursery, forged my signature, lined up a buyer, and smiled like nothing was wrong. How do you fight back when the people stealing from you call it love? Do you stay quiet? Or do you take everything back, one legal page at a time? I pulled my suitcase up the driveway, hearing the gravel crunch under the wheels louder than usual. Maybe it was the silence I expected that made the noise seem sharper. Too sharp. My head was still full of the last conference session in Dallas, and I hadn't even unpacked the protein bars in my bag. I just wanted my bed. Familiar quiet. A long, hot shower with water pressure that didn't feel like it was rationed. But instead of silence, there was a low thrum. Laughter, music, the unmistakable sound of children darting barefoot across a wooden deck. I frowned. At first, I thought it might be the neighbors. A graduation party, maybe, or a block potluck. But as I turned the corner and came up the front steps, I saw it. A massive white banner stretched across my own porch, tied tight to the columns I paid for, read, "Family means forever. Carter Reunion 2025. I stopped cold. My hand gripped the suitcase handle like it was an anchor. The door was wide open. I could see balloons drifting around the foyer. The kitchen window glowed with warm light, my light. The scent of pulled pork and sugary coleslaw spilled out like a joke. I heard someone inside shout, "Make sure Donna gets the first plate." My mother's name. I stepped inside. No one turned, no one noticed. Not even my dog, who wasn't here, because I didn't bring him this trip, knowing I'd only be home for 48 hours. It was easier to imagine I'd made a mistake, that maybe I'd walked into the wrong house. Except the framed photo on the wall, me, age 6, holding a lopsided birthday cake, confirmed this wasn't a stranger's home. It was mine. I slipped off my shoes, out of habit, and moved past the laughter, past a group of cousins I hadn't seen since my father's funeral, and made my way upstairs. The second-floor suite I designed, paid for, and lived in when I wasn't traveling was at the end of the hall. I reached into my bag for the key. It didn't fit. The door wasn't locked. I pushed it open. My breath caught. My bed had been made, with someone else's linens. There was a diaper bag in the corner, a breast pump plugged in near the closet, and a pair of floral wedges lying carelessly across my armchair. I walked slowly to the bathroom. My toothbrush was gone. My shampoo was replaced with baby-safe soap and a lavender-scented candle I would never buy. A pink loofah hung where my father's razor used to be. A child's plastic duck floated in the sink, half filled with murky water. My hand brushed the edge of the mirror as I reached for a towel, but the one hanging wasn't mine. It was monogrammed with Stephanie's initials, my brother's wife. I turned back into the room. On the nightstand was a half-eaten granola bar, a crumpled paper towel, and a toy that chirped when I accidentally nudged it. I looked to the bookshelf. My books had been stacked and moved to a single crate labeled upstairs storage, and where my framed research certificate used to stand, there was now a Carter family photo from someone's beach trip. I wasn't in it. No one had even tried to make it look like I still lived here. I went back downstairs. Still, no one noticed. Aunt Carol was hugging someone who looked vaguely familiar. Cousin Jamie lifted his glass and gave a toast to the ones who built this home, nodding at Travis and Donna like I didn't exist. I stood in the hallway, half in shadow, half in the light from the dining room, and watched a slideshow flicker across the living room TV. Photos from years ago, and some from recent months. Birthday cakes, baby showers, 4th of July barbecues. All in this house. My house. My face was in 2 photos. Both from childhood. Nothing after 2005. I could feel the heat building in my chest. Not anger, not grief. Just heat. Like something old was burning from the inside. I turned, walked toward the foyer. My suitcase was still where I left it. The wheels tilted slightly, like even it didn't want to stay. As I reached for the handle, I whispered it. Quiet. Just for me. I'm not supposed to be here. I looked back. No one noticed. Then I opened the door and stepped out into the dusk. Then, why did they make sure I was gone before they came? I didn't go far. Just circled the block, walking slow, trying to find a version of this that made sense. Maybe someone else planned the reunion. Maybe it wasn't supposed to be in my house. Maybe it started as something smaller and spiraled. That's how they'd explain it, I was sure. The kind of lie that doesn't sound like a lie until it's repeated too many times. By the time I stepped back inside, the light had shifted. The evening sun angled through the front windows, casting long, warm strips across the floor. Most of the guests had migrated into the living room. The noise was softer now, no more kids screaming, just the low hum of conversation and a faint playlist of 80s throwbacks that probably hadn't changed since the last family barbecue. I stood just behind the edge of the archway, half in the dining room, half in the hallway, watching the slideshow flicker on the big TV. The opening slide read, "The Carter Legacy." A baby picture of Travis came up first, then another of him in his high school jersey. Graduation, his wedding, baby shower, more of Travis. I kept watching. The screen showed Donna blowing out candles at her 50th. My father, just once, sitting next to Travis, arms slung proudly over his shoulder. There were group photos from events held in this house. My house. I remembered each one because I'd been out of town for most of them, working conferences, speaking at panels, doing what they always said was too much, or not really family-friendly. Then came a slide with the title, "The Next Generation." There was my nephew and Travis's godson, 2 kids I barely knew. Then, nothing. There was no photo of my white coat ceremony, no snapshots from med school, nothing from the day I got this place, handed my mom a set of keys, told her she'd never have to worry about rent again. They'd erased me, not out of spite, I was starting to understand, but out of narrative. I didn't fit the version of family they wanted to showcase. I stepped back, moved toward the kitchen. My mother was near the fridge, laughing about something with Travis and 2 of our cousins. She turned and caught sight of me. Her smile faltered for half a second. "You're home," she said, like I was the unexpected guest. "I thought you'd be back tomorrow," she added quickly. "Didn't Travis tell you?" Travis, cool as ever, picked up a tray of lemon bars. "I said Friday or Saturday, I think." "You said the house would be quiet," I said flatly. Donna's voice turned soft. Performed. "Sweetheart, this wasn't about excluding you. We just assumed you'd be working." "That's your go-to, isn't it?" I replied. "Assuming." Travis raised a brow, still smiling. "Look, it's just a gathering. It sort of grew. It wasn't this big at first. We didn't want to bother you." "No," I said. "You didn't want me involved." I pulled out my phone. No missed calls, no emails. I opened the family group text, or rather, a group text. There was another group chat listed. Carter Core. My number wasn't there. I didn't say anything else. I didn't give them the satisfaction of seeing me react. Instead, I walked down the hallway toward the guest bathroom. I needed a quiet place to think. I closed the door behind me, leaned against the sink, and let the silence wrap around me. I opened the email app, searched Carter Reunion. Nothing. Then I thought about the banner outside. That thing wasn't homemade. It was printed, laminated, the kind of thing you custom order from a shop. That takes planning. That takes intent. They hadn't forgotten me. They'd excluded me from the start. I stepped out of the bathroom and made my way slowly through the house. I paused in front of the fridge, scanning the taped-up list of guests and assigned sleeping areas. My name wasn't on it. I took a picture. Then I walked back to the living room and snapped a photo of the banner. One more of the slideshow. I didn't know what I would do with them yet, but I knew better than to rely on memory alone. Paper trails matter. I caught sight of Travis raising his glass again. Another toast. "To family," he said loudly. "The ones who show up." People cheered. Donna laughed. Stephanie raised her cup. My name wasn't in the speech. Not even a glance in my direction. I turned back into the hallway, opened my messages, and tapped out a text to someone who would tell me the truth. When did they first tell you about this reunion? I sent it. Waited. No answer. Then I typed again. Because something tells me I wasn't just an oversight. Because apparently my name was the first thing they took off the list. I didn't get a response to that text, not right away. So I stepped outside, trying to breathe through the weight in my chest. It wasn't even anger anymore. It was the awareness of being rewritten. There's something uniquely cruel about being forgotten on purpose. The side yard was quieter. Most people were either watching the slideshow or hovering around the dessert table. I stood near the drink station, rubbing the condensation off a cup of sweet tea someone had left behind. The ice had melted completely. That's when a man I didn't recognize, probably married to one of my cousins, waved at me from across the folding table. He smiled politely and said, "Hey, could you refill the napkin holders when you get a sec?" I blinked. "Excuse me?" He tilted his head, still smiling. "You're one of the caterers, right?" My mouth opened, but nothing came out. Not yet. He didn't seem to notice the pause, just pointed toward the serving trays. "They're running low." I didn't move. He gave me an awkward half laugh, shrugged, and walked off. I looked down at what I was wearing. Black slacks, a clean blouse, flats. Functional, not festive. I was dressed like someone who'd arrived from a conference, which I had, not like someone who was part of this celebration. From behind me, a woman chuckled and said, "Oh, that's Travis's sister. She works a lot, I think." Another voice replied, "Right. The one who lives in Boston or somewhere?" Austin. I live in Austin, in this house. I turned and walked back inside, slipping through the crowd like a ghost who used to live here. The living room was darkened now, curtains drawn for the projector. I leaned against the far wall as the slideshow continued, the room full of quiet laughter and nods of recognition. There was Travis again, in his college football uniform. Him with his son, Stephanie kissing his cheek. Photos of Donna holding a grandchild. Beach trips, birthdays, milestones. "And here's the family through the years," the voiceover said. Travis's voice, of course. A few old pictures of me flashed by. Toddler, then a preteen holding a plastic trophy. That was it. Nothing from my medical school graduation. No photos from the charity gala where I'd spoken as keynote last fall. Nothing from the day I handed this house's keys to my mother with a smile I had to force through the tremble of my father's absence. Then, a photo I did recognize. The day I moved in. I remember standing next to the porch rail, holding a plate of lemon bars Donna had baked as a housewarming gesture. Except in the slideshow image, I was cropped out. All that remained was Travis, mid-laugh, as if it were always his moment. From the couch, a teen cousin whispered, "Didn't she leave for, years?" "Yeah," another muttered. "She wasn't really around." I turned away before I could hear more. Upstairs, I slipped into the guest bathroom and locked the door behind me. My hands gripped the edge of the sink. I stared at myself in the mirror. Not teary, just tired, like someone watching themselves shrink from the inside out. I didn't cry. Instead, I pulled my phone from my purse and opened the messaging app. I clicked into the family group thread. Then I opened the other thread. The new one, the one I wasn't part of. The one where everything had been planned. I went back to the last birthday text I sent Donna, 3 months ago. "Happy birthday, Mom. Call me later." She hadn't responded. Just a thumbs-up emoji a day later. No words. I scrolled further. The pattern was clear. I had become a side note. Not even background support. Just logistical furniture. The one who funded the house. The one who stayed away. The one they could cut out cleanly, as long as they did it slowly enough. I opened WhatsApp. The Carter Core group didn't have my name on it. I clicked Leave Group without hesitating. Maybe they didn't erase me. Maybe they just replaced me with a version of me that never asked to be remembered. I tapped Velma's contact. "Are you here?" I sent. No reply. I typed again. "If you are, I need 5 minutes. Just you and me. Because I need to ask the only person in this family who might actually tell me the truth. I waited near the back patio, where the light had started to shift into that muted orange that only shows up at the end of summer. A few of the older cousins were gathered near the garden, playing cornhole and arguing over whether the brats were cooked through. I stayed near the edge of the shadow, barely visible, until I caught Velma's eye. She knew. The way her expression changed the moment she saw me, she knew. I motioned with 2 fingers, nothing dramatic, just enough. She didn't say a word to the others, just set down her cup and followed me quietly along the back of the house, out of view from the sliding glass doors. We sat on the edge of the porch steps, facing the fence line. I waited a moment before speaking. Tell me something I don't want to hear. Velma exhaled slowly. They planned this back in April. I didn't flinch. She went on, steady. Your name was never on the invite list. Donna told me not to bring it up. Travis said you wouldn't care. I stared straight ahead, jaw tight. Velma reached into her handbag and handed me a folded printout. The paper was creased and smelled faintly of cinnamon gum. I opened it. A spreadsheet. Names, RSVP dates, room assignments. Everyone. Even cousins I hadn't seen in 10 years. Except me. You're not crazy, baby, she said softly. They wrote you out. I nodded once and folded the paper, slipped it into my pocket. The backyard laughter kept drifting toward us, soft and full of inside jokes I hadn't been invited to be part of for years. But this was different. This wasn't neglect. This was strategy. Later that night, after the last tray of food had been covered and the music switched to low country ballads, I moved upstairs. There's a cabinet at the end of the hall, a holdover from when my father insisted on family-accessible documents. Donna had claimed it after he passed, labeled it household files. It wasn't locked. I slid the top drawer open. Bank statements, maintenance invoices. I kept flipping until I saw a thick folder labeled Deed plus Ownership. I opened it. The first page was a copy of the original co-ownership agreement. My name was there, in the place where it should be. The second page was a printed draft, heavily edited. There was a signature in my name, but the ink didn't match. Neither did the handwriting. It looked like someone had tried to trace it, then gone over it twice to make it stick. 2 sticky notes clung to the corner. Ask Notary Monday. Include transfer clause for seamless title change. I stared at them for a while. It was like reading your own obituary and realizing it had been scheduled in advance. I took photos. Every page. Then carefully slid everything back into place, exactly how I'd found it. As I walked back toward my room, I passed the kitchen and paused. The light was still on. Voices, low, familiar. I moved closer, keeping my steps quiet on the hardwood. Travis. Once it's transferred, she won't be able to block anything. Legally, we'll have control. She's never here anyway. Donna. I just want it settled before the baby comes. I can't deal with more stress. Travis again. She thinks she's the martyr, but she doesn't even show up for Easter. And I'm sorry, but this house means something to us. Donna made a clinking sound, probably tapping her glass against his. It should go to someone who values it. I didn't move, just turned and walked away. In my room, I opened the bottom drawer of my desk and pulled out my own file. The one with the deed. The one signed with a real pen, by a real notary, in a real bank office I paid for. I laid it side by side with the doctored one on my desk. Then, I pulled out a fresh legal pad. Across the top, in black ink, I wrote, Fraud. Intent to transfer property without consent. I underlined it twice. Then, slowly, I added, Forged signature. No written consent. Financial misrepresentation. Verbal confirmation. Kitchen, 9:40 p.m., Donna and Travis. I set down the pen and stared at the list. There was no need to shout. No need to confront them with rage. If they wanted to turn this into a power move, They were going to learn what it was like to face someone who doesn't need to scream to win. They thought I was the quiet one. They were about to meet the version of me they worked so hard to erase. I tucked the tampered copy into a folder, sealed it, and slid it into my briefcase. Then I put the original deed back into my drawer and locked it. Back on the legal pad, I scribbled one more sentence across the bottom. If they want a war over this house, they're going to get a legally binding one. They think I'm here for the potato salad, but I'm here to take inventory of what they've already stolen. It was almost 10 o'clock when I made my way to the stairwell. The party had thinned out, but the people who mattered, at least to the plan, were still hanging around. I found a quiet spot halfway up the stairs, where the second-floor landing overlooked the living room but stayed out of everyone's line of sight. The floor creaked under me slightly when I sat down, but no one looked up. I pulled the legal pad back onto my lap and continued the list, cataloging every red flag I'd ignored for years. That's when Velma came around the corner. She had a small styrofoam cup in her hand, probably tea, maybe coffee if someone had bothered to brew it fresh. Her eyes scanned me first, then the pad in my lap, and she gave a knowing nod. "I heard your name wasn't even included on the original group email chain," she said, lowering herself slowly onto the step beside me. I didn't respond right away, just kept the pen hovering, mid-thought. She sipped whatever was in the cup and looked toward the voices drifting up from below. "They chose this weekend because you'd be out of town," she continued. "Travis said you'd just make things complicated." "Complicated," I repeated, mostly to myself. "I asked about you," she added, her voice quieter now. "Donna said you were busy. Travis said you'd thank them for not dragging you into the hassle." I exhaled, not sharply, but like I'd been holding something stale in my lungs too long. "They didn't just forget me," I said. "They planned around me. Strategically." Velma placed the cup beside her on the step. "You always were the one who held it all together, but when people get too comfortable, they forget who paid for the glue." She left not long after. I stayed where I was, thinking about that glue, about how much I'd invested just so they could pretend it had always been theirs. About an hour later, once dessert had been served and cleared, Donna tapped her glass with a fork. "Let's do a little family check-in before everyone heads out," she called. I paused at the top of the stairs. "Just something light," Travis added from the dining room, where people were beginning to shift their chairs. "Talk through shared spaces and such, housekeeping stuff." By the time I walked in, the table was full. I was the last to sit. The tone started politely enough. Travis led with a joke about overwatering the front lawn, which Donna turned into a comment about the sprinklers needing better scheduling. Then things drifted. "Since Lacey travels so much," Travis began, glancing at me but not really looking, "we were thinking it might make sense to revisit the structure." "The structure?" I asked, flat. Donna jumped in. "Your brother and I were just thinking, maybe you'd be more comfortable selling your share. We could make sure the home stays functional." "Functional," I echoed. Another label. Another box to be placed in, then shelved. "You're gone more than you're here," Travis said. "This way, you wouldn't have to worry about any of this." Aunt Rachel chimed in, lighthearted. "Honestly, I thought she already signed off years ago." There were printouts on the table. Not the originals. I would have recognized them. But photocopies. One had my name highlighted in yellow, circled like a hazard zone on a map. No one made eye contact. I didn't raise my voice. Instead, I looked directly at Travis. "You didn't think I'd be home tonight?" He shifted, his mouth forming a half smile. "You're always moving. We just figured—" "No," I cut him off. "You counted on me not being here." I stood up. Slowly, not rushed. I gathered the papers closest to me and flipped them face down. "Next time you want me to sign away my property," I said calmly, "maybe don't leave a post-it note on my legal pad." The room stiffened. Donna's smile faltered. I walked out without waiting for anyone's response. When I reached my room, the door had been left ajar. My stomach clenched. I pushed it open and scanned the space. Nothing was out of place, except for one new detail. A small square post-it on the top of my legal pad. No pressure, but the sooner the better. I stared at it for a full 10 seconds, before picking it up, folding it in half, and dropping it into the trash. I didn't need that kind of handwriting in my life anymore. This wasn't a reunion. This wasn't even family maintenance. It was a handoff, coordinated like a business merger, disguised as nostalgia and guilt. They had gathered to transfer power, ownership, history, and they had planned it in my absence, assuming I wouldn't notice or care. Or worse, that I'd let them. Back at my desk, I opened the legal pad to a fresh page. In bold, at the top, I wrote, "They think I'm here for the potato salad, but I'm here to take inventory of what they've already stolen." I closed the notepad, set it beside the folder, and leaned back in my chair. My phone buzzed on the desk beside me, lighting up with a notification from the family's shared calendar. It was labeled Brunch with Core, scheduled for Sunday morning. I wasn't invited. I didn't even blink. Instead, I left my suite and headed toward the guest rooms. I wasn't looking for confrontation, just space. Some air that didn't smell like deception masked in lemon-scented furniture polish. As I stepped into the hallway, I nearly collided with Kayla, my cousin's teenage daughter. She had something clutched in her hand, swinging it proudly. "Hey, Aunt Lacey," she chirped, holding up a delicate gold chain with a small curved pendant. "Look what Grandma gave me. She said it was hers from back in the day." I stopped in place. It wasn't Donna's necklace. It was mine. I bought that chain 6 years ago, the same week I made the final payment on the house. I gave it to Donna with a handwritten note that said, "Thank you for believing in my dream." She'd smiled and said, "This will always remind me that we built something together." And now, she had passed it off like a party favor. "That's nice," I said, my voice measured. "It suits you." Kayla smiled and skipped past me, humming something off-key. I turned and walked back to my room, shut the door gently, and sat at my desk again. I didn't slam drawers. I didn't cry. I didn't even get angry. I just took out my phone and opened my email. And there it was, like it had been waiting for me. Subject line: "I didn't think it was real until today." It was from David, one of the few cousins I still halfway trusted. We'd gone to the same undergrad, stayed in touch here and there, nothing major. The message started simple. "I'm sorry, I should have said something sooner." Attached was a forwarded thread. A long one. The kind that builds over weeks, where people feel comfortable revealing who they really are, because they think the room is private. The first email was from Travis. Subject: Carter Weekend Agenda. In it, he outlined the tentative schedule for the reunion, including room assignments and catering notes. It was dated 3 months ago. Halfway down the thread, a reply from Travis stood out. "Lacey's too intense. She'll ruin the vibe. Let's just plan around her." Donna replied shortly after. "She's always been distant. She'll be fine. She's got her own life." The rest of the family had chimed in with emojis and short, agreeable comments. Not one person said anything in defense. No questions, no pushback. They didn't just leave me out. They painted me as difficult, unapproachable, a liability to the mood. I closed the email and sat still for a moment, staring at my reflection in the darkened screen. What bothered me most wasn't the exclusion. It was the quiet agreement, the convenience of it all. They'd chosen to make me the problem, so they wouldn't have to admit their own comfort with erasing me. I opened my laptop. Folders lined the desktop, some personal, some professional. But I clicked straight into the one labeled House. Inside were the deed scans, the email correspondence from the bank, tax records, zoning permits. I began dragging all of it into a new folder. I renamed it June Property Conflict, Legal Prep. Next, I opened the family Dropbox. I scrolled through the photos they'd uploaded from the reunion. Me? Not even once. I right-clicked the folder. Delete. A pop-up asked, Are you sure you want to remove yourself from this shared folder? Yes. Done. Then, just to be sure, I logged out completely. I wasn't part of that history. I wouldn't keep pretending to be. Before going to bed, I pulled up the voicemail app on my phone and hit record. Hi Barbara, it's Lacey. I'll need an hour of your time Monday morning. It's regarding misuse of shared property and what I believe qualifies as forgery intent. I saved it, labeled it voicemail legal notice, and added it to the new folder. Then I stood, walked over to the door, and locked it. For the first time in a long while, I smiled. Not because I felt triumphant, not because anything had been fixed, but because I finally understood where I stood. I wasn't here to ask for understanding. I was here to set the record straight. Please stay after the party clears out. I need a witness. Velma's reply came 2 minutes later. I'll be there. I slipped my phone into the side pocket of my slacks and moved quietly down the hall. The lights in the house were lower now. Someone had dimmed them to match the slow fade of the evening. Most of the guests were congregating around the dessert table or drifting toward the front door. The night had shifted into the soft, polite phase where people say long goodbyes they don't really mean. That's when I remembered the drawer. There's a pantry closet off the kitchen that Donna turned into a kind of household command center. Not quite an office, but close enough. The shelves were lined with printer paper, receipts, junk mail, and mismatched pens in a mason jar. On the small counter space, I spotted a neat stack of printed documents, right where I expected them to be. I pulled them closer, flipping through slowly. The first page made my chest tighten. It was a revised co-ownership agreement. My name was at the top, my signature at the bottom, except the pen stroke was off. My actual signature curves down in the R. This one arched slightly upward. They had tried to fake it. A sticky note had been pressed just above the line. Review final terms with notary before Monday. My stomach turned as I read the clause halfway through the next page. In the event the co-owner is absent for more than 90 days in a calendar year, full authority will default to the primary resident. They hadn't just guessed I wouldn't be home. They planned around me. I took a photo of the signature, then one of the clause, then the cover page. I slid them back exactly where I found them and walked back into the hallway. The conversation downstairs had gone faint, broken up by music and clinking silverware. On my way back to the stairs, I paused at the door to my old bedroom. It was cracked open. Inside, the room had been transformed. A banner reading Baby Coyle's Nursery hung above the bed frame. There were baby clothes neatly folded on top of the dresser, onesies, tiny socks, a blanket with embroidered initials. Balloons floated lazily near the ceiling. The scent of baby powder drifted through the air. Travis stood in the corner, giving a tour to one of our aunts. Best natural light in the house, he was saying. Figured this space made the most sense. I stepped inside. He didn't stop speaking. You mean my room? I asked flatly. He glanced over at me, then looked back at the aunt. Come on, Lace. You hardly use it. You're barely here. I nodded once. Right. Barely here. And that means it's open for grabs? Another cousin poked her head in and added, It's kind of poetic, isn't it? One chapter ends, another begins. I didn't respond, just walked over to the dresser and picked up a stuffed animal, something generic and plush. I haven't died, I said. Travis exhaled loudly. Don't be dramatic. You live in airports now. I set the toy back down and walked out. Back in my suite, I shut the door, locked it, and leaned against the edge of the desk. My hands weren't shaking yet, but I could feel it creeping up. The kind of shake that doesn't come from nerves, but from clarity. Cold clarity. I opened my legal folder, spread the documents across the surface, and started writing a timeline. April. Initial group emails. No mention of me. May, new co-ownership draft printed. Signature faked June. Family check-in used to pressure sell-off tonight. Bedroom repurposed. Documents exposed. Intent confirmed. This was no longer a misunderstanding. This was coordination. Calculated transition of property disguised as a sentimental weekend. This is no longer an emotional wound, I said under my breath, pen still moving. It's a legal violation, and it ends tonight. I opened my laptop, composed a draft email. Subject: breach of co-ownership agreement. Immediate action required attached. Photos, copies, timestamps. I didn't hit send yet. Not until I had a second set of eyes on it. I grabbed my phone and texted Velma again. Front porch, midnight. Then I opened my window to let the air in and sat in silence. I could still hear muffled music, the last chords of something old and familiar. Travis's voice echoed faintly from below, still laughing, still leading. But by this time tomorrow, none of them would be laughing. They'll get the email before dessert. I closed the laptop with a quiet click and stood still for a few seconds, letting the silence wrap around me. The room felt cleaner now. Not physically, but inside my chest. Like I'd finally cleared the air I'd been holding for years. The draft email had been sent. Velma had seen everything. I didn't need to rehearse it anymore. By the time I made it downstairs, the kitchen was already full of daylight and chatter. A stack of syrupy plates sat in the sink. Someone had opened the back door, letting in warm air that smelled like overripe fruit and sunscreen. I poured a glass of water and glanced at the digital clock on the microwave, 8:17 a.m., and then my phone buzzed again. I turned it over. A notification lit up across the screen. Stephanie had tagged me in a Facebook post. That stopped me. I tapped it open, still holding my glass. The first photo in the carousel was a group shot. Half the family, all smiles, standing on the front lawn under the banner. I wasn't in it. The second was a baby-themed table setup. The third was a wide shot of the main floor bedroom. My old room. The caption read, "Our home is finally complete. Baby Coyle's new nursery. Shear's family means forever." Below it, Donna had commented, "So proud of you both. This house is truly yours now." I didn't speak, didn't blink. I just took the screenshot. Then another. Then archived the post, saved the entire thread and backed it up. Every like, every comment, every digital fingerprint of what they believed to be true was now documented. I rinsed my glass and set it down in the sink. Later that morning, while most of the guests were chatting over coffee or dragging coolers toward their cars, I walked to the file drawer near the pantry. It was labeled Guest Stay Forms. Nothing important had ever come out of that drawer, but something in my gut said, check it. Halfway down, beneath a bundle of old allergy release forms and printed maps to nearby hotels, I found a manila folder clipped closed. I opened it slowly. Inside were two forms. The first was labeled Voluntary Transfer of Ownership, Coyle Residence. My name was printed at the top. A line waited for my signature. The second version had the same format, same header, same layout, but this one was dated 3 weeks ago, and it already had my signature on it. Sort of. Not mine exactly. Close enough to pass if no one looked too hard. The ink tone was off. A slight drag on the second D in Darnell. My actual signature was tighter, more compact. This one was too open, too practiced. Clipped to both pages was a post-it note in Travis's handwriting. L needs to sign by end of June to avoid penalty clause in refinancing. Another note beneath it. Houston buyer interested. See email. I sat down right there on the kitchen stool and read everything again. They weren't just celebrating family. They were lining up a buyer. I stood, folder in hand, and walked straight to the stairs. Back in my room, I placed the documents next to the others, reunifying all the pieces they thought I wouldn't notice. I opened my email, started fresh. Subject: termination of informal co-residence. Property use access. No message body, no introduction. I attached photos of both forged documents, screenshots of Stephanie's Facebook post and Donna's comment, a PDF of the original co-ownership agreement, voice memo from Donna and Travis in the kitchen. I addressed it to Barbara Reynolds, attorney, Travis Coyle, Donna Coyle, Stephanie Coyle. I hit send, no delay, no second guessing. I sat back and waited. By midday, the house was buzzing again. This time, not from music or cornhole matches. There was tension now. Clenched jaws, side glances. I passed Travis once in the hallway. He didn't say a word. Just looked at me, his face pale, lips pressed into a thin line. Around 3:30 p.m., Velma found me sitting on the front steps. She handed me a bottle of water and lowered herself onto the brick edge beside me. "It's done, isn't it?" she asked softly. I nodded. "They'll get the email before dessert." Velma didn't respond. She just gave a small nod, like she'd been expecting this moment since Friday. Inside the house, Donna's voice rose behind the walls. Not shouting, but high, quick, brittle. Something about gall, something about embarrassment. I didn't move. Out on the lawn, a toddler shrieked with delight as he chased bubbles across the grass. The bubbles burst silently against the sunlight, one after another, leaving no trace. That felt about right. The email had landed. The house was quieter now, charged, but quieter. I could feel it in the way the floor didn't creak with the same carefree energy when someone walked past. The laughter had drained from the walls. No one said a word to me directly, but there was no need. Silence, when it comes like that, says everything. By morning, the kitchen had a strange tension. Travis and Donna sat at the table, each with a phone in hand, unread emails glowing like warning lights. I stepped in, poured myself a cup of black coffee, and leaned against the counter. Travis was the first to break. "You're serious?" I nodded once. "I was serious 6 years ago. You just weren't paying attention." Donna rubbed her temples like she had a migraine coming on. "We're family. You don't evict family, Lacey." I didn't raise my voice. "You're right. Family doesn't need to be evicted. But you didn't treat me like family. You treated me like a silent investor with no say and endless resources." I pulled the envelope from my back pocket and slid it across the table. "Notice of restricted access," I said. Filed and notarized. Travis didn't touch it. Just looked at me with that wounded face he always used when things stopped going his way. "This isn't right." "It wasn't right the moment you forged my signature," I said calmly. "It wasn't right when you handed my room to a baby that isn't even born yet. It wasn't right when you left me off the guest list of a party happening in my own home." Donna reached for the envelope with a shaky hand. "You're doing this because of hurt feelings. You'll regret it." I finished my coffee and set the mug in the sink. Being alone is easier than being erased, and frankly, I've been practicing for this for years. An hour later, the moving truck pulled up. It was a warm Sunday. The sun was already high, and the asphalt radiated heat in waves. The movers were fast, polite, and efficient. I'd paid extra for that. I didn't want drama. I wanted boundaries. From the front porch, I watched as they packed up Travis and Donna's belongings. Box by box, crib parts, kitchen tools, photo albums. Donna had labeled everything with a blue marker the night before. I could tell by her handwriting on the side of the boxes. Travis stood with his arms folded across his chest, watching a mattress being wheeled down the driveway. Velma stood beside me, quiet as always. She hadn't said much since the night before, but I felt her presence like a wall between me and the ache that threatened to return. "You didn't yell," she finally said. I gave her a small smile. "That would have given them something to feel righteous about." Donna approached once, just once. Her voice was softer now, more desperate. "You'll be alone, Lacey. This isn't what your father would have wanted." I stared at her. "You're probably right. He would have expected you to do better." She didn't have a response to that. By late afternoon, they were gone. The house was quiet again. Not empty. Quiet. There's a difference. I walked through the rooms slowly. My bedroom was just that again. Mine. The guest room had been cleared out. No toys, no random shoes. The kitchen didn't smell like butter and sugar anymore. It smelled like fresh air. I took a mug from the cupboard, poured myself another cup of coffee, and settled on the windowsill in the hallway that overlooked the front yard. The sun was dipping low. Golden hour, the house always caught the light perfectly at this time. That had been one of the reasons I bought it. Not for them. For me. My laptop chimed on the side table. A message from Barbara, my attorney. Property control resecured. Title reaffirmed. Case closed. I opened another folder I'd been working on for months, quietly. Q3 Housing Grant. Women in Transition Program. I'd already submitted the preliminary paperwork to the city. This house, once hijacked by people who couldn't see past their own entitlement, was going to serve women like me. Women who had been cut out of stories they helped build. Women who needed space, quiet, and dignity. Maybe this house can finally be what I built it for. Later, I texted Velma. Breakfast Sunday? She replied almost instantly. Only if you make the coffee. I laughed. Real this time. Not out of victory, but balance. It didn't feel like an ending, not a dramatic one anyway. It felt like the kind of quiet that comes after a long rain. I set my phone down, slipped on my sandals, and stepped out to the backyard. The banner was gone. The one that used to hang across the porch. I didn't know who took it down or when, but I was glad. It never really belonged here. Family means forever. Maybe. But boundaries? Boundaries mean peace. I stood for a moment in the morning light. Not waiting, not hoping, just breathing.